Thanks, Kira. Good morning, everyone. I will now call the hearing to order. I will like to begin by acknowledging that we are in Treaty 1 territory and the traditional homeland of the Métis Nation. This morning I will be chairing the hearing. My name is Robert Hutchings. On my direct left is Mr. Sawatsky. On my far left is Mr. Whitbread. We have our secretary today is Ms. Balshaw, and the assessor representing the Assessment and Taxation Department is Ms. Martins. We will be hearing applications for revision of the assessment roll in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which revision is requested have been described in each application, and we will limit discussion to those matters. The statements that applicants or the assessor make at this hearing are sworn testimony, and anyone speaking to the matters must be sworn in. Be advised that comparisons of assessments of properties are not considered evidence of market value by this Board of Revision. The Board of Revision is appointed annually by Council and is independent of it and the City Administration. It makes its decisions on the basis of the evidence provided at this hearing and issues a written order that will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the Board's decisions with respect to an application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or to Queen's Bench if the matter pertains to the application of exemptions from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included with this Board's order. With respect to the hearing process, I will confirm the matters to be addressed with each applicant following their swearing in. We will then have the assessor's testimony followed by cross-examination by the appellant first and then the board members, and then the appellant's testimony followed by cross-examination by the assessor and the board members again. Each side will have an opportunity to summarize if they wish. Once all the evidence about an application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave. The process will repeat for each item on the docket today. The session will close after all the applications have been heard, and the board will deliberate in private and make its decisions based on evidence presented here today. You will receive the order by registered mail as soon as possible. As information, all public hearings are live streamed, recorded, and will be part of the public record. And please, out of courtesy, can everybody put their cell phones on silent? Kara, could you swear in the parties, please?
Will you look on or swear? It's fine. Okay. Please state your name.
Jennifer Martins.
Do you swear the evidence you present today is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you. Please state your name.
Trevor Glenn Smith.
Do you swear the evidence you present today is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kara. Good morning, Mr. Smith, Ms. Martins.
Good morning.
The first property on the docket today is 130 Tuxedo Avenue. We're dealing with a 2020 realty assessment, and I guess this is a Manitoba Housing Corporation property. So, Ms. Martins, when you are ready, please.
This is roll number 12073850500 130 Tuxedo Avenue. The assessed value is $16,999,000. This property was built between 1972 and 1977. Its plan area is 80,791 square feet, and we have 127 suites. If you look on page 2, we have some comparables. It was brought to my attention that my comparable number 3 is it's condominiums, so that one should be taken out of comparison, please. On page 5, we have the income workup showing the 2 different streams.
I'm sorry, Ms. Martins. We're just going to have to call a short recess, please.
Sure.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Kara. Thank you. I'll call the hearing back to order. Ms. Martins, again, 130 Tuxedo Avenue. When you are ready, please.
Okay, let's go back to page 5, please. Here it shows the 2 income streams. We'll just look at the summary of them. We have a potential rent of $1,984,253 with a vacancy loss of 2.4%. We have expenses at 53.48% and a cap rate of 5.3%, which gives us our $16,999,000. On page 8, there's a picture of the property. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Martins. Mr. Smith, any questions of the assessor, please?
I do. So just to, I guess, summarize in the beginning, we have 8 properties today. All of them are Manitoba housing. So in the interest of efficiency, many of my questions and statements will be the same. So I thought perhaps we do them all in detail on the first property and just add details thereafter, if that's okay with
Thank you.
with everybody involved. So the subject property is 147 total suites. That's correct.
Yes, sorry, 147.
Okay. And this is always a question that has to be asked simply because I understand the workload. I don't imagine you had time to inspect any of the properties.
No, I have not inspected any of the properties or any of the comparables.
That's fair. The comparables then, as we're dealing with all 8 properties, if we could just look at those for a minute. And I do understand that you haven't been able to look at those. May I submit rebuttal on the comparables at this point, Mr. Chair?
Yes, please.
Sure. So there's a copy for everyone. Is it all there?
Yep.
Ms. Martins, would you like a moment to review these?
No, I'm good with this one.
Okay.
Okay, so I'll just.
So you provided photos of the assessor's comparables. Is that correct?
I did, yes.
Okay.
If I could just,
Okay.
I guess, as our rules are not super clear, I guess like to provide a bit of detail with regard to them.
Sure.
The comparable number 1 is relatively brand new, built in 2011. All 3-bedroom units. It's shown at the top of my page there. You can see it's got driveway and garage parking. Nicer level of construction. Certainly higher quality than the subject property or properties. It's located in Transcona by the Transcona Country Club, essentially, just off of Plessy. Second property is in South St. Patel, River Park South. There's side-by-side units with, again, driveway parking for residents, et cetera there. The third one, 1201 St. Anne, oh, sorry, we've already addressed that, and I believe it's been taken off. The comparable number 4 is 2885 Ness Avenue. It's located in St. James, roughly at Sturgeon and Ness. They're attached townhomes. 2 and 3 bedrooms, mostly 3 bedrooms at $857 for the rent there. The 2 on Albina Way, comps number 5 and 6. If you flip the page, is located in Tyndall Park, but it's in a nicer section of Tyndall Park, backing onto the retention pond lake. These properties, again, attached townhomes, garage parking, driveways, higher end build, nicer location. Thomas Berry, comp number 7, located in St. Boniface, close to the St. Boniface Hospital. Attached townhomes, parking is not provided, that's on street there for that one, I believe. Stainless steel appliances and that type of level of build out inside. And the final comparable number 8 is the closest, actually no, we're dealing with Tuxedo, my mistake. 1217 Redwood, built in 77, 5 3-bedroom units. That's located west of McPhillips, in close proximity to Gilbert Park. And these are attached 2-story townhouses with on-street parking, probably the closest in level to Manitoba housing built-out in my estimation, as far as age and location and quality of the structure. Did you want to quiz me on any of that, or?
Absolutely not.
Okay. Let's get back to the brief then. Looking at the valuation. The potential rent that is assigned to the subject property, do you have any background on that, or it's model driven, I imagine? The whole thing is model driven?
Everything's model driven right now.
And the capitalization rate of 5.3%. In the past, I believe there has been a consideration in the department with regard to townhomes, where the cap rate was recognized to be higher. Has that been done for the 2020 cycle?
I'm not aware of that. This is my first deal with townhomes.
Okay. And so the cap rate range that the city has for, I guess we'd be looking at low rise, I see they're all the same, so we'd be looking at low rise B, I suppose, in the city's categorization. It ranges from 4 to 7.3. Has condition been taken into account in the signing of the cap rate?
Yes, the condition is used in our system. I'm not sure which factors are applied to the cap rate specifically, but the condition of the properties has been noted in our system.
Okay. And do we know what condition is assigned to this particular one, or the
Not off the
various
top
ones?
of my head.
Okay. Those are all of my questions, thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
Thanks very
Smith.
much.
Ed, any questions of the assessor?
Yes. Of the comparables, would you agree that comp 4 and 8, as Mr. Smith has indicated, would be the best comparables to
Yes.
these? All right. And were there any questions on the information they provided with regards to expenses and so forth, or costs?
I don't think I had any questions about the expenses that they submitted.
Thank you, that's all.
Thank you. Mr. Whitbread?
No, we'll get this.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Ms. Martins, let's start with page 3 and 4, I guess. So we've got, no, well, let's go to page 5, the summary of your brief. So we've got 2 income streams, two workups for classification purposes, I guess, is that
Yes.
right? Okay, they're both, it's grantable Manitoba housing. Can you explain, they're both apartments, why would there be 2 income streams? Are they 3-story, like single kind of row houses? I was looking at the picture there.
I think potentially because of different, like, so they look different because some of them are, we have 1 and 2-story buildings. So I think potentially the way that they're set up, because it's such a large area.
Okay.
But if you ask me to point on a map which ones are 10 and which ones are 20, I wouldn't be able to.
Okay, on page 8, if we look at the bottom left along Edgeland there, it's address 251 and 253. Is that an apartment building?
That's a separate roll number.
Oh, it is separate. Oh, yeah, okay, it's bumped out there. Okay. Okay. All right. Okay. Now, there's an age variant on the property. If I'm looking at the summary on your page 1 of your brief. Any recent permits or inspections for this property?
I didn't find any. So I'm not sure what the level of upkeep is.
Yeah.
I haven't had a chance to take a look or inspect.
Okay. And we are on the corner of Edgeland and Tuxedo Boulevard, is that right?
Yes, we
That's
are.
the 130 Tuxedo Avenue, pardon me, yeah. Basically on the south side of the center. Okay.
I believe it's across the way, like from Tuxedo, across the way is over where Asper.
Yeah, 8 Rady Center is, yeah, and then
Yes.
your condos are going up there, okay. Okay. So you didn't find any building permits or any, and there's no recent inspections?
No.
Okay. All right, maybe we'll talk to Mr. Smith about that, I'm sure, but, and the age variant, that's not reflective of any recent updates to the property as far as you're aware?
No, because it's in alignment with actual year built. So I'm pretty sure that we didn't go
Oh.
in and alter it. It's a pretty big area with lots of buildings.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing that it was built in stages, but that's just a guess.
Okay, okay. All right. Okay. Those are all my questions. Mr. Smith, when you are ready, please.
Okay, thank you very much. So we're dealing with 130 Tuxedo Avenue. And just in general today, we're dealing with 8 different Manitoba housing properties. At the beginning, if I can get you to flip to my page number 15 that deals with capitalization rate. Just like to review that text to begin with, if we could. The point that I want to draw your attention to here, and we'll cover it perhaps one more time very briefly, but if you look at the middle of the paragraph, I have a quotation from Mr. Richard Colton, who's an accredited appraiser in the United States. He's a recognized expert with regard to valuation of social housing. He's written a book called Valuation and Market Studies for Affordable Housing. And in this he states, developing a market-derived cap rate for an income-restricted property begins with an analysis of the available rates for similar unrestricted properties. Then these rates are adjusted based on the risk factors that an investor would consider in developing a cap rate. The result is a cap rate based on market factors and associated risks. In the final analysis, property tax assessment must take into account the public purpose of the project, the overall benefits and burdens, and the restricted nature of the operating rents. So the point here being that this is not a standard market apartment, and while we treat elements of it for valuation purposes as a standard market apartment in order to arrive at a fair net operating income, there are elements that need to be considered in the valuation through the cap rate that absolutely need to be addressed, as stated in by Mr. Polton and in appraisal theory. So let's go back to the beginning here, 130 Tuxedo Avenue. As stated, we have 147 units. They're all townhomes situated on a 10.5 acre site. So if you look at the cover page of my document, you can see the extent of the area that this townhome covers. Obviously, there's a lot of exterior ground to maintain here, a lot of additional infrastructure that one would not typically face in a standard market apartment. Even townhome complexes don't typically have this extent of ground to be maintained. In addition to that, you're looking at, I don't have the exact figure here as to the number of individual buildings, but as you can see from the roof line, there's a significant amount of roofing to be maintained there. Each of these units obviously has their own individual water heaters, etc. There's so much more infrastructure to be maintained in a property such as this versus in a normal market situation that needs to be considered in the operating expenses that are arrived at for all of these properties, majority of these properties today, I believe. So moving on, property was built beginning in 1973. We have 72 to 77 here, so yes, it was probably somewhat staged. The condition of the property, we have a number of photos here, some exteriors. I should have probably included a few more interior shots, but it's not in good condition. While it is located in Tuxedo, it is Manitoba housing, and it is very representative of interiors of Manitoba housing in general. The build-out is fairly original. They have not had a significant amount of updating in this project at all. So you can see from the flooring tiles to the kitchen cabinetry to the furnishings in the bathrooms, etc. It's all very basic in nature and very well used in many cases. Things are replaced on a basis where once they're to a state that they need to be replaced, then they're replaced essentially. So that is the condition of the property. It's definitely on the very low end of the scale, I would say, despite where it is located. Moving forward from there, the location of the property you can see on my page number 9. It is located between Doncaster and Edgeland and Corydon and Tuxedo on the northern end. Property is broken into a suite mix of 39 2-beds, 64 3-bedroom units, and 44 4-bedroom units. So looking at the property from an investor's point of view, you have a building with a very non-standard, or a property with a very non-standard breakout of units, with a very high degree of 3 and 4-bedroom units. 3 and 4-bedroom units are in significantly lower demand in the marketplace than certainly 2-bedroom units and 1-bedroom units. So the level of demand for those out there would be lower, driving perhaps more vacancy, as well as the need to fill those units, perhaps impacting the rent that is achievable in addition to the condition of the units themselves. The overall location is shown on page number 10, and we can then move into the valuation section. So my overall approach for the valuation of these properties today, including 130 Tuxedo Avenue here, is to compare them to the marketplace to arrive at fair rental values, then to examine their operating expenses, determine if they are fair or not, and make any adjustments that are required to come to a net operating income. So as Manitoba Housing is in the social housing business, obviously, they provide the units on a rent geared to income basis, so there is no market rent for these units that we can rely on to establish the rent for them. So we have to go to the marketplace to determine what would be a fair rent for these properties. Looking at my page number 11, we have our rental comparables. Moving on to page number 12, you can see as we go through those, there's a variety of locations there. We have 2, 3, and 4 bedroom rents, and we tried to, I believe all of these are townhome rents as I look through them. I made sure that we only used townhome comparables to be fair in arriving at a rental rate for those. So if you look at the bottom of the chart on page number 12, you can see the average rents that we arrived at for these unit types. So 2-bedroom units came to $885 on average, 3-bedroom units to $1,001, and 4-bedroom units to $954. 4-bedroom units being very rare in the marketplace. I've included some stats from CMHC with regard to average rents for standard market apartments, and then townhome rents as well. Townhome rental units in the market are certainly not as common, so there's not a great degree of comparables out there. If you look at the subject property, it is located in Tuxedo. The condition is certainly well below average. What we have done in arriving at fair rental rates is assign the average rental rates for those unit types to the individual unit count to arrive at our overall gross potential income. So using those average rents on page number 13, we came to gross potential income of $1,711,476. Just for comparative purposes, the actual revenue that they brought in for the relevant period was $707,555, so roughly $1 million less than what we're projecting for the property. Not that that should be considered a fair rent for the property, but just as a note. We have used the same 2.4% vacancy as the city has. If you look at the bottom of page number 14, we can move into the expense allowance. Again, following appraisal theory, we have had available 3 years of operating history for the subject property. So we've gone through a stabilization process for the property, and you can see how that was done in the chart. By and large, we used 3-year average where it was appropriate, and or the actuals in the case of property taxes. They did not assign or account for any professional fees, as they don't charge an internal amount for that. We simply added $2,000 for professional fees as a nominal amount as well. They don't account for property management, so we assigned 5% of effective gross income as the market standard. So that's how we've derived our expense allowance. The capitalization rate, as we touched on briefly before, moving on to page number 15 here. So we have a social housing situation here, and that entails a number of things that a sophisticated investor would look at in purchasing a property such as this. You would you're looking at a situation where you have tenants in place at essentially below market rents. Those tenants would have the right to remain as tenants in their units going forward once you had purchased the property. It's not a situation where you could quickly turn the property, renovate it, and increase your rents to dramatically boost your revenue and your return on the property. So that is certainly a significant factor that would be considered. There's obviously additional operating expenses as discussed, both the size of the exterior land area, but more importantly, the amount of structure that needs to be maintained, both roof and infrastructure, as well as interior operations such as furnaces, etc. Physical condition, obviously below par in the marketplace. If you were to take this on, there'd be a significant amount of deferred maintenance that would need to be addressed, and you would address that on purchase in what you would pay for it, which would obviously increase the capitalization rate. And there can be other disposition restrictions on sale as well that would be considered by any astute purchaser. So looking at all of those factors, there's certainly a much higher risk that would be assigned to a property such as this. If you were a sophisticated investor and you had property A being 130 Tuxedo Avenue, Manitoba Housing, and you had an adjacent property that was identical in nature but was a market housing property without the same issues, you would assign significantly different value on purchase of those two properties, and that would be based on your capitalization rate. Our internal market cap rate study generally ranges between 5 and 6% for the relevant time period. I've also provided a bit of background with regard to the national commercial brokerages that are operating in Winnipeg on investment sales. So we have both Colliers and C.B. Richard Ellis shown here. And I present their cap rates from both 2016 and 2018. By and large, we're seeing stability over that time frame with it, no decrease in cap rate, no real increase in cap rate. If you look at the stats for Colliers on page number 16, for high-rise apartments, they're showing a range in 2016 between 5 and 5.75%. That changes to 5 to 6% in 2018. Low-rise apartments, 5.25% to 6% in 2016, changing to 5 to 6% in 2018. So again, their range going up to 6%. C.B. Richard Ellis on page number 17, you can see their ranges there. For Winnipeg in 2016, they have low-rise ranging between 5.5% and 6%. Low-rise B being 5.75% and 6%. Moving on to 2018, in the bottom left-hand corner, it remains identical, 5.5% to 6%, 5.75% to 6%. And looking at the chart on the bottom of page number 17, you can see a very stable capitalization rate trend as shown by C.B. Richard Ellis over the last number of years leading into 2018. So with the general overall range of investment being shown by market participants and our own internal study, ranging between 5% and 6%, we then have to take into consideration, as Mr. Polton had indicated in his book on social and affordable housing, you have to take into account the premium and the risk factor that an astute investor would assign to social housing such as this, given all of the issues that would be faced. So on top of the market cap rate, you have to then add what an astute investor would apply to that, given the issues surrounding these properties. So we're looking at rental income restrictions, rental market restrictions rather, smaller pool of tenants. Obviously, additional operating expenses, physical condition of the properties, deferred maintenance, certainly in this case, that is an issue. Lack of a reserve fund, there is no money set aside for replacement of capital expenditures. And finally, disposition restrictions. So looking at all of the above issues for the subject property, we have assigned a cap rate of 6.5% based on this study. So capitalizing net operating income, we arrive at a final market value of $13,069,000, which is shown on page number 19 in summary. If you look at my page number 3, you can also see the appeal history of the subject property. So in 2018, the property was reduced at the Board of Revision to $14,492,000. This has been appealed to the municipal board. 2016 was not reduced at the Board of Revision. This is also under appeal at the municipal board. And we recently reached agreement at the municipal board to reduce the 2014 value down to $14,179,000 as shown. And that is my presentation. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Ms. Martin, any questions of the appellant's evidence?
Just one. In discussing the number of bedrooms, you mentioned how there's limited number of 3 bedrooms, 3 and 4 bedrooms, and it's my understanding from people that I've talked to that there's a waiting list for 3 bedrooms. So I don't think that I'm curious about where the information comes from that the demand for 3-bedroom apartments is low.
Well, there are significantly less 3-bedroom units in the marketplace because there is lower demand for those. So when properties are constructed, they're typically 1 and 2 bedrooms, sometimes 3 bedrooms. So there's less of them in the marketplace. It may be that there could be a slight waiting list for certain locations or certain properties. But overall, there's much lower demand for 3-bedroom units.
We've talked about, you touched briefly on the fact that it's a different demographic that we're going after. It's a different grouping of people that is going for market, and that's part of the reason for increasing the cap rate, that you've got a smaller pool of people. Is it possible that the different pool of people have different requirements for numbers of bedrooms?
Well, as it is social housing, when Manitoba Housing constructs their properties, they do take into account what their demographic is, obviously, so they have designed it to meet the needs of the public that they're housing, and in some cases, those are families, and they will need, you know, in some circumstances, they'll need more bedrooms, so you do have, in Manitoba Housing, you do have more 3 and 4 bedroom units than in the typical marketplace.
So perhaps the requirement for them is not as low in this group as it is in the general market.
In this group, certainly, I would agree, yes.
Thank you, that's everything.
Thank you. Mr. Whitbread, any questions? The
I'm
appellant?
racing through your material and trying to remember, did you say you used the same vacancy rate?
I did.
Okay, 2.4?
I did.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else, Richard?
No, that's it, thank you.
Okay, if you have anything else, I'll let Mr. Ed here ask questions, and then we'll go back to you if you want.
Yeah, no worries.
So your cap rate range was 5 to 6%.
Correct.
And you're saying because of risk factors, a number of other things, that the cap rate should be 6.5. I'm still trying to get my head around what the risks are. I mean, you mentioned the condition of the buildings.
Mm-hmm.
The difficulty of renting some of the units because of the number of bedrooms, et cetera.
Mhm.
Can you just summarize that for me, that extra 5.5%?
Sure, absolutely. So, as an investor, obviously, when you're looking to purchase this, you need to consider all of the factors in play. So where you're looking at a property that has significant deferred maintenance. If you look at the interiors of the units, that's pretty standard across the board for the whole property. There's a lot of money to be invested in this over time. Things have been replaced on an as-needed basis. You have additional operating costs over a normal market situation, given the size of the infrastructure, given the amount of land. You have rents that are lower than market based on income. These people have entered into agreements with housing. Those would not end upon purchase, in that they have the right to remain in those units under Manitoba law going forward. You would certainly have an issue making any adjustments to rents that are being paid there. And if you look at the amount of revenue that they collected, which was a little over $700,000 versus we're projecting $1,711,000, that's a massive red flag to me as an investor. How do I make this a true market apartment in short fashion, so that my investment pays off and is what I think it's going to be. There's also operating agreements with the government, obviously going forward. There is no reserve fund set aside for the building specifically, for the property specifically, to account for any of this deferred maintenance. So there's a huge number of points that would indicate that the risk factors versus a market apartment or a market multifamily property immediately adjacent to it, same location, would be significantly higher on properties such as this. And the appraisal theory does agree with it. My last point there, I guess, would be there's very few trades of townhouse, apartment, properties in the marketplace, and they would be on the higher end of the scale to start with, given, the, issues surrounding them as well.
The other question I have is, you mentioned the enormous amount of space that's on the property. Do you know what the planning rules are, the zoning rules are for this property? And I guess my question, if a developer were to buy this property, would there be opportunity to add more units to this lot, given the, the space and redevelopment of some of the
Well,
property?
I did not bring the zoning regulations with me, so I wouldn't want to comment on whether they could add density to the site, but what we're looking at there is entirely different than what we're valuing, because we're valuing the property as it is now, not what it can become if they were to change the built structure on the site. So what a developer would pay is not what's in consideration.
Thank you.
Anything else?
That's it.
No? Okay, thank you. Richard? Okay, Mr. Smith, my first question would be, you've provided photos of the interiors. When were these taken?
They were taken this summer.
This summer, okay. And you visited the property?
We did, yes.
Okay. Is there construction going on there?
I do not remember construction going on there, no.
Okay. Over the last 2 years, has there been? In that whole
I haven't
complex?
visited on it over the last 2 years. I just looked at it this summer.
Okay. Yeah, and there's no permits you're aware of?
Not that I'm aware of, no, and
Okay.
there's no specific plan for renovation to my knowledge.
If the province undertook a major renovation on a property like this, would it show up on the books of this building, or would it be a separate expense that was coming out of some other budget?
It would be separate. It wouldn't be included in the operating expenses,
Yeah.
if that's the question. It wouldn't be lumped in there.
Okay, so the repair and maintenance, that only covers general painting, flooring,
Standard.
standard
The standard,
maintenance. Okay,
standard maintenance issues.
all right. My next question is, so we've got subsidized rents now. I was looking at page 11 and 12 of your comparables, sales or market evidence, I guess. If you wouldn't mind, if we could go there and look at the listing of the sales that are in there. I think you've come up with a rent based on these sales of $970, or when you're using the income approach, I believe $970, yeah. Or, let's start with page 11. Are any of these rents from subsidized buildings?
I can go through them quickly for you if you'd like. Page number 11, we are looking at cooperative housing here, so they're operated on a break-even basis. We have Willow Park, Village Canadian, Carpathia, Shelmerdine, Willow Park East, and another one of the Carpathia properties there. So their market rents that they charge their residents are essentially at market. They are cooperative housing, but they need to be able to obviously cover their costs and have a slight surplus.
Index number 3, 88 Swindon Way, is that a, but that's a subsidized?
That is a cooperative.
Yeah.
It's a cooperative.
Based on income?
No.
Rents, subsidized?
We are looking at, that is Carpathia Housing Co-op, which I believe we dealt with last week.
Yeah, yeah.
And that is, that is the apartment complex, or, it's not a tower, it's a mid-rise
Yeah.
building for Carpathia. So it operates as a co-op, so they're there to break even, obviously.
But there were some
There was
subsidies?
some subsidy
Or
there,
based
yes.
on income, yeah.
There
Okay.
was some subsidy, yes.
Okay, and then on page 12?
Now, to be clear, the 960, the 963 was based on market rent for that, and then they had subsidy on top of that, and there is, yeah.
Okay, page 12, are these?
On page 12, these are all market, all true market comparables, except for 400 Carpathia at the top, which is also Carpathia Housing Co-op. But if you look at those comps, there's not a significant difference in rental rate there. And again, we're looking for fair comparables here. So if you're looking at the comps that we've shown there, 2 Oak Park Walk, which is in East Kildonan, 22 Windmill Ways in Charleswood, Biscaynes are in Fort Garry off of McGilvery. Generally, probably not in the same condition that Manitoba Housing properties are typically in, both in the interior and exterior of the building. It's just a harder use given the cohort of residents that are in Manitoba Housing in general. So the averages that we're showing there, I think, are more than fair in terms of what rent would be paid for these properties.
All right. Okay. So I'm gonna go to page 19 of your workup. You've got your workup as compared to the property assessment department workup. This is a total, I guess, because they required, because of the property classification, to split it. So there's a portion assigned to class code 20 and a portion assigned to class code 10. And that's the way the roll sits. Is that correct, Ms.
Yes.
Martins? Yeah, okay. Yeah, okay.
So this is a summary of those combined.
Yeah. You obviously don't break it apart like the assessment department does.
If you go back, no, I didn't in this case because it's valued in exactly the same way, so there wasn't
Right.
any real
Yeah.
need, I didn't feel.
Yeah, okay, no, fair enough. When we make a decision, we do have to split it, so,
Oh, I see, yes,
Yeah.
I understand your point.
yeah. But that's okay, that's our workload, I guess, but, okay.
May I interject?
Of course,
If you look at my page 5,
yes.
it shows that, if you look at page 3 and 4, it shows that we've given the same value to the per unit rent
Yes.
for each.
Yeah.
And then the vacancy and expenses and cap rate are exactly the same for each, so it should.
Yes, yeah, I
it's,
noticed that, yeah.
They are treated the same, it's simply the class code that makes a difference.
And you've come up with, on page 5, two separate net operating incomes, but you use the same capitalization rate,
Yes.
expense percentage, and vacancy loss, so yeah, it's split there for us, okay. All right. Okay. I don't think I have any other questions. Ms. Martins, any requirement for summary?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Smith?
No, thank you.
Okay, so some of the major factors you've come up with, we'll take them into consideration in the next, okay, maybe quickly summarize and make reference to them, how's that? Okay, that concludes 130 Tuxedo Avenue. Does anybody require a break?
I'm fine.
Richard, okay. Okay, next property on the docket is 43 Killarney Avenue, and we are dealing with a 2020 Realty Appeal. Just bear with me 1 second here, sorry. Carrie, you had that? Okay, thanks. Okay. Martins, when you are ready, please, 43 Killarney Avenue, and we're dealing with, again, Manitoba Housing, okay?
Yes, thank you. This is roll number 0304238510. This property has two buildings. The actual year built was 1977, and we've applied an effective year built of 1982. If we look at page 2, we've got the same comparables as the previous property. And as in the previous one, please remove comparable number 3. On page 3, we've got the income workup. We have a suite count of 18 with a monthly rent of $1,034.31. We've got a vacancy loss of 2.4%, expenses of 50.72%, and a cap rate of 5%. This gives us our estimated value of $2,149,000. On page 6, we have just 2 photos of property, just so you can see the layout of the units. And then we did receive an income and expense mailer. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Martins. Mr. Smith, any questions?
No, I have no questions regarding this one, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Whitbread, any questions of the assessor?
No. Thanks.
Mr. Sawatsky?
Cap rate, 5%?
5%, it's model driven.
Model driven. Where is it on your range? Do you have a range for this type of?
If you look at our capitalization rate chart here, we don't have the range for the townhomes. But it is within our general range of between 4 to 7.3, which we have for our multifamily properties.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have, thanks.
That's it. Ms. Martins, so we're using the same comps for the Manitoba housing complexes, okay?
Yes.
So the actual rents charged here are subsidized rents,
Yes, they are.
okay? So you've gone into the marketplace and looked at similar apartments. So these ones are all 3-bedroom suites. I'm looking on page 3 of your presentation.
Yes.
Okay. And original year built was 1977, but there's an age variant to 1982.
Yes.
Would you know why that is?
I couldn't find the direct notes on that particular change, but it was done a while ago. So
Okay.
I'm assuming that it's because there were some upgrades or
Yeah, modernization of some kind.
something done at some point between 1977 and now.
Okay. Right. And you haven't inspected this property?
No.
I have no other questions. Mr. Smith, when you are ready, please.
Yes, thank you. So 43 Killarney Avenue, it's located in Fort Richmond. Again, Manitoba Housing property for social housing, originally built in 77, and there have been some updates since that time. We have a few photos for you. They have done some flooring renovations with their new, I guess, standard finishes. While the flooring looks like beautiful wood there, it's very resilient and designed to last many years. It's not a high-end finish. If you look at the kitchen photo, it's very similar in nature to that. So there's not the same degree of deferred maintenance with this property, but all of the other factors still remain in place as discussed. Moving on to the valuation, I will just direct you at this point to my page number 17, where the summary is, as well as yes, to page number 17. So if you look at the total rent that the city had used of $1,034, and the finish of the interiors here, etc., it's very close to what we had as an average for the 3-bedroom units. So we have deferred to the city's revenue. In this case, we've used the same vacancy rate. Their expense allowance was very similar to what we had projected as a stabilized expense. So overall, we're in agreement with their net operating income. After checking it against market, it does appear in this case to be fair. So we have agreed on the net operating income. Moving on to cap rate, again, we're looking at townhome style apartments here. They're far less in demand by investors. In fact, we haven't been able to determine a cap rate on sale in a number of years for townhome apartments. There may be one or two that we missed, but we try and do a pretty thorough job on them. But in any case, there's far fewer of them and much less demand. Several reasons for that. There's obviously higher operating costs. You have many more things that can crop up as an issue when you have duplication of all of the systems in all of the townhomes, etc. There's a lot of things that will need more frequent replacing than in a standard market situation. So cap rates for townhomes tend to be higher than for normal walk-up or tower apartments, obviously, for those reasons. The city is my understanding that in the last cycle, in any case, there was a higher capitalization rate assigned to townhomes. Is my understanding. I'm not. I don't work for the city, so I can't quote that. But that is my understanding of how townhomes were dealt with. Now, looking at cap rate, as a townhouse property, it would fall towards the upper end of the range, our range being 5 to 6% roughly. So I would say at a minimum, you'd be at 5.75 to 6%. And given the restrictions and other issues, well, with regard to risk that an investor would consider, we've assigned a cap rate of 6.25% to this property. It is in better condition. There are smaller number of units, so there will be more purchasers out there, etc. So we've used the 6.25% cap rate for those reasons. And that gives us our market value of $1,719,000. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Ms. Martins, any questions of the appellant?
No.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Whitbread?
No?
Mr. Sawatsky?
You've inspected the site?
Yes.
No further questions?
Okay, thank you. My only question, Mr. Smith, you're accepting the rent, I guess, looks like the same market rent as the assessor?
We accepted all of the parameters that the
Yeah.
city did once we checked them against the property and against market.
Okay.
Yeah,
So you're accepting her
Net
market
operating
evidence?
income.
Yeah,
yes.
as part of your analysis. Okay. All right, no other questions. Ms. Martins, summary if required?
No, thank you.
Mr. Smith? Okay, that concludes 43 Killarney. Thank you. property on the docket is 86 Ulster Street, and we are dealing with a 2020 realty assessment. Again, an MHRC property. Ms. Martins, when you are ready, please.
This is roll number 030438360000. The assessed value is $758,000. On this property, there is one building. It is 2 stories. The actual year built is 1988, which matches the effective year built. The land area is 14,586 square feet with a plan area of 3,024 square feet. On page number 2, we have the comparables, again, the same comparables for the other properties, so please disregard comparable number 3. On page 3, we have the income workup. This property has a suite count of 6, and they're all 3-bedroom suites. We've given a monthly rent per suite at $963.20, with a vacancy loss of 2.4% and expenses at 50.72%, and an overall capitalization rate of 4.4%, which gives us our $758,000. On page 6, there's photos of the property, and then their income and expense mailer is included.
Thank you, Ms. Martins. Mr. Smith, any questions of the assessor?
Yes, just regarding the capitalization rate, so, the prior property, very close in proximity to the subject property?
I think so. They're
Fairly close.
Fort Richmond-ish.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it was 18 units, this one's 6?
This one's 6.
The capitalization rate assigned to this one of 4.4%, significantly lower than the prior one?
Yes, it is. It is also model driven.
Okay. And that would be towards the very low end of the cap rate, overall cap rate range that you have for apartments, right?
Yes, it is.
Okay, those are my questions, thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Mr. Sawatsky, any questions of the assessor?
Well, it's the same question on the cap rate, 4.4 compared to the, still trying to understand why it comes in at the low end compared to the other one.
Just looking at the property, I would say it's because it's a single building as opposed to being 2 buildings. And if you look at the aerial view, it is much more comparable to, like, it's very small. It's a 6-unit building. It's my opinion that this one would be more desirable as a purchase, more likely to sell on the market. With keeping in mind all the other factors involved in a management housing property.
Well, the applicant's probably gonna talk about the risk factors.
Well, that's true, but
Or
this
are
is.
the risk factors the same as the previous one?
Uh,
Or what are the risk factors?
Well, the risk factors are the same as any income producing property, with the added risk of being managed housing properties. So you've got the rent constraints, and it's already subsidized by the subsidized housing. But this one being a single building, so there's less. It's smaller and it's a single building. So with any of the income producing properties, it's a smaller property. It's more likely to be run by, it would be more manageable by somebody who's an individual person as opposed to a large corporation. And being 6 units, that is much more manageable than 18.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ed. Okay, it's a Manitoba housing building, and it's income-based rental, is that right? So it's subsidized rental?
It's subsidized rental.
And any history of appeals on this property at all that you're aware of?
I didn't look if it was at, if we have waiting at municipal board on this
Okay.
one.
Okay, all right, that's my only questions. Mr. Smith, when you are ready, please.
I have one very brief follow-up question, if that's all right.
Of course.
The basement area was not included in the gross floor area here, correct, for this property?
Just doing quick math, correct.
Okay. Okay, great. To the assessor's point, I would agree, it is a smaller property. There is a greater pool of investors that would be able to tackle purchasing a 6-unit property versus an 18-unit or a 147-unit property. So there is an associated increase in demand, I suppose you could say, for smaller properties such as that may drive a lower cap rate. And I do agree with that. I do not agree with the 4.4%, certainly, in any sense, but there would be a decrease in cap rate over that, despite some of the issues that we'll look at. So I will go through this relatively quickly. Property was built in '88. It is located in Fort Richmond. It is Manitoba Housing. This one is in poorer condition than the one that we just reviewed. If you look at the interior and the exterior photos, you can see the condition of the outside. There's significant deferred maintenance with regard to exterior decking, exterior surfaces, painting, etc. They have had some water penetration issues with regard to the windows that are in place. If you look at the kitchens and the flooring, etc., it is original to the date of construction, and obviously has the wear and tear associated with a Manitoba housing property over that degree of time. So it is in what I would term below average condition in the marketplace. It is not in the same condition as the prior one. Now, looking at valuation, we went through the same considerations for this as we have for the others. I will not walk you through that, in that, again, looking at the property, we are in agreement on the rental income. I felt what was assigned was fair. For the subject property, we agree with the 2.4% vacancy. Our expense allowance, once stabilized, for the subject property was actually slightly higher than the city's at $38,000. However, we have deferred to their expense allowance of $34,000. So we're essentially in agreement on the net operating income once we look at it in comparison to market. Now, looking at cap rate, we've discussed this in detail. My additional commentary with regard to this one would be that a 6-unit complex would be more achievable by a wider degree of investors, so there would be more demand, and it does drive a slightly lower cap rate. And for that reason, we're at 6% versus 6.25% on the prior property, despite the condition of the units. And that drives our final market value of $556,000. Now, I would say, in reference to that, don't draw that conclusion across all of the other properties, as we're looking at a 6-unit apartment building here. It's somewhat different. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Martins?
Nothing, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ed, any questions?
No, he's clarified it for me.
Thank you. Richard, any questions?
Can you just comment on the internal structures? I'm trying to go by the photographs, and I'm not seeing the same kind of disrepair internally that seems to be evident externally. Can you comment on that?
Sure. So we weren't able to inspect each individual unit, but the photos, if you go in here, If you look at the kitchen, yes, this particular one has been maintained, but what I'm pointing out is that you're looking at the original cabinetry from 1988, you know, with the Euro-style wood handles, et cetera. Same countertops from that time frame. I see that this particular range has been replaced. They hadn't all been. If you look at the flooring, it's that standard, what's that tile called, of that vintage?
I wanna say linoleum, but.
Yeah, standard linoleum tile from back then. And, yeah, I can't point out everything, but if you look at the top of page 6, you can see the water penetration, with that unit there with the wall underneath the window. Many of the registers, you can't, it's difficult to show everything in photos, but there was some damage on registers, et cetera. And then just, I guess, general condition of grouting in the bathroom there. That's not a significant point, but it is of its vintage in Manitoba housing, so it hasn't been upgraded.
So you are unable to comment on how frequently the upgrade, or not upgrade, but maintenance, painting and flooring is completed?
No, well, that's dependent on the government and the availability of funding for such things for Manitoba housing. So it's that's an internal government and Manitoba housing issue. They go through phases where money is available, where they will obviously devote funds to the properties that are most in need of things and do renovations, et cetera. Bring them up to current base standard. So they design them to be very long wearing and basic, but they'll obviously look nicer than finishes from 1988. But it's very dependent on that money being available, which swings with time, obviously.
Do you know if there's a different pot of money for internal versus external?
That I do not know.
You don't know, okay. Thank you. No questions.
Thank you, Richard. Mr. Smith, any appeal history on this property that you're aware of?
I'm not sure if it was appealed in the last cycle, as I was not representing the client in that time frame.
Okay. And as far as you know, there's no pending municipal board, or no history that you know of?
I'm honestly not sure.
Okay, fair enough. Okay. That's my only question. Ms. Martin's requirement for a summary?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Smith?
Oh, thank you.
Okay, I think we are going to take a 10-minute break, so we'll be back at 25 to 11. Please. Thanks, Kira. I will now call the hearing back to order. Next property on the docket is 567 St. Anne's Road, and we are dealing with a 2020 realty assessment, and again, a Manitoba Housing Corporation built property. Ms. Martins, when you are ready, please.
This is roll number 0800466540. The assessed value is $5,412,000. This one was built in 1989 with a land area of 119,961 square feet and a planned area of 17,940. If we look on page 2, same comparables as the previous, and again, please remove comparable number 3. If we look on page 3, we have a suite count of 42. This property has 22 bedroom suites and 22 3-bedroom suites. We've applied a monthly rent per suite of $1,118.68. A vacancy loss of 2.6%, expenses of 50.72%, and a cap rate of 5%. If we look on page 6, there's 2 overhead views of the property. And we've also included the income expense information that they submitted. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Martins. Mr. Smith, any questions of the assessor?
Yes, I do. Just looking at the cover page there, so for this property on St. Anne's, the basement area appears to be included in the gross floor area for the calculations there, is that correct?
It does appear to be added, yes.
So in the typical marketplace, difficult to state this, I guess. If you were selling a home, would the basement be included in the quoted area of the property?
No, it would not.
Okay.
And this one being a combination of this one is all two-story. Yes, no, it should,
So it probably shouldn't be included in the gross floor area then?
probably not.
Okay, thank you. So that would likely lead to an increase in rental rate, would that be fair to say? If the area was greater, the model would consider more rent for that, based on the size of the units?
Being that it is counted as basement space, I'm not sure of the influence that it would have depending on the parameters that were placed on the basement space, on how that would impact the rent.
Okay, and the subject property is 22 bedroom units and 22 3-bedroom units. Looking at the rental rate, and it was built in '89, so similar to the last one. When I look at the rent per suite, however, it's gone up from what the mainly all 3 bedrooms or 3 bedrooms were. It's at 1,118. Is
Yes.
that? Do we have any comment regarding that, or any explanation?
I'm not.
I don't mean to put you on the spot. but
Oh, no,
it
I
has to
did
be
not take
brought
a
up.
look at the quality, the rental quality that was put on either of these properties. And I'm also not sure if that was influenced by that being a 6-unit building where this is has 42 suites.
Okay.
So I'm not exactly sure why that unexpected increase in rent would be apparent.
Right, okay, so if we went back to Tuxedo again, there's majority of those would be 3 and 4 bedroom units, and
Yeah.
rent there was 1,124, and we're at 1,112. It just seems like the rent is on the high side.
That could be
Okay.
a possibility.
All right, thank you. Again, it's all model driven, and we're not sure what the condition assigned to the property is.
Exactly,
in the
yes.
model. Okay, those are all of my questions, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Ed, any questions of the assessor?
No questions, thanks.
Thank you. Richard, any questions of the assessor?
No questions.
And my only question, Ms. Martins, is this is Manitoba Housing subsidized rent.
Yes, it
So
is.
you've got into the marketplace to look at comparable, in your opinion, comparable rents. Okay, that's my only question. Thank you. Mr. Smith, when you are ready, please, 565 St. Anne's Road.
Sure. So 565 St. Anne's Road, located in St. Patel, originally built in 1989. 22 bedroom units and 22 3-bedroom units. The condition of this property is fairly original. They have done some degree of exterior work as the property had a significant exterior deferred maintenance that had to be taken care of. I believe this is not that one. If you look at the photos of the property, you can see the original nature of the cabinetry and the flooring. with minor replacements where required. I think you can get the overall picture of the wear and tear that's present in the majority of these units. There has been no interior renovation to these, so they would be considered to be below average in the marketplace. So that's our starting point in valuation. Looking at the valuation portion, I'll just quickly again refer to the city's comparables number 4 and 8 as shown in their 2, 4, and 8 for that matter, shown in their evidence showing monthly rents of $600, $857, and $738 for 2 and 3 bedroom units by and large. I have those particular rents, or I would have included them in my evidence as well. The valuation approach is the same as it has been for all of these properties. We have assigned the average rental rate to the subject property here, and given the deferred maintenance, we have made for the condition of the interior and the property in general, we have made a deduction of 5% in the rental rate. If you were to look at what these would rent for, are they average market units? No, they're not. They're typically a bit smaller, and obviously in this case, not at an average rental level of condition given the wear and tear and the build out. So we have made a deduction of 5% to the rents, and that's shown on page number 12, giving us our overall average of $898 per unit, which I think is pretty in line with the 2 and 3 bedroom rents that both we have and that the city shows as well. We've used the 2.4% vacancy rate in our analysis. The expenses for the property are shown on page number 13, and we've done a 3-year stabilization of those expenses. None of them are extraordinary. If they have been, we've made adjustments where appropriate. You can see how that's done in the final column of the table at the bottom of page number 13, and we arrive at a stabilized expense allowance of $247,849, which is actually under what the city has projected for the property. Moving on to the capitalization rate. Again, we've run through this a couple of times. We're still looking at the same factors here. Property is 42 units in total, very original build out, significant interior wear, and based on the risk factors and all the discussion previously, we have assigned a cap rate of 6.5% to this property. Again, regarding townhouse capitalization rates, they do tend to be higher. We did not have one from the appropriate time frame. I had one going back a number of years that I didn't bring forward as it didn't really fit within the appropriate time frame, but it was over 6% for the purchase of that townhome property, which was just off of Portage Avenue to the west of Polo Park. So using the 6.5% cap rate, looking at this property, we come to a final market value of $2,972,000. Evidence from the commercial real estate brokerage houses, and if you look at page number 3, of my brief, you can see that the property was appealed in 2018, was reduced at the municipal board, and has been further appealed to, reduced at board revision and has been further appealed to the municipal board. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Ms. Martins, any questions of the appellant?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Ed, any questions of the appellant?
Risk factor is the same as the previous?
Yes, it's not different.
Because you said there had been some exterior work done.
Well, if you look at the photographs, there's some nominal, I believe they did some siding, where it was required again. It had deteriorated to the degree that it rose to the top of the heap as far as needing replacement, so that was done, but there's nothing been done interiorly.
Any idea what that improvement was valued at?
No.
Okay. Thank you. No further question.
Thank you. Richard, any questions of the appellant?
Yeah, I don't see any photographs of the basement, unless I missed something here. Condition of the basement, the infrastructure down there, like water heaters and furnaces,
Right.
original equipment?
It would be original except where replacement was
For
required.
for
and no-
breakdowns?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and no build out, just bare cement walls, et cetera.
And you weren't there, so you can't tell.
Anything else, Richard?
Nothing else.
Thank you. My only question, Mr. Smith, page 13, expense, your expense analysis. Your stabilized is higher than any year of the 3 years.
Yep.
16 was 245,000, the other around 210,000, yet you come in at 240,
I do.
basically 248.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Let's talk about it.
Okay.
So, Manitoba Housing does not have property management included in their statements that they run on them, as they don't charge property management to themselves. They're a social housing organization. There is no property management
Okay.
fee set aside. So we
You added it.
assign the 5% of EGI as standard in the marketplace, and there's been a number of other adjustments. We added in professional fees. They don't have professional fees. Everybody has professional fees. If you look at the R&M, we have 85,000.
Okay, that's
on
average, okay.
42. There's nothing out of the ordinary here.
Fair enough, okay, thank you. And that's my only question. Okay, and you're asking us to reduce it to 2,972,000.
I am indeed.
Cap rate 6.5, okay. Ms. Martin, any requirements for
No,
summary?
thank you.
You good? Mr. Smith?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, that concludes 565. Oh, my only question, where is this located, 565 St. Anne's Road? What
So
would it cross?
if you look at my page number 9, it is just immediately south of Bishop Grandin Boulevard.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Next property on the docket is 615 St. Anne's Road. And we are dealing with the 2020 realty assessment, no other issues. Owned by Manitoba Housing again. Ms. Martins, when you're ready, please.
Thank you.
This is roll number 0800542500. The assessed value is $11,131,000. We have 8 buildings on this property. They are 2-story properties. It was built in 1976. We have a land area of 271,666 and a plan area of 52,552. If we look on page 2, we have the same comparables. So again, please remove comparable number 3. And on page 3, we have our income workup. We have a suite count of 100 with a monthly rent per suite at $1,037.43. We have a vacancy loss of 2.6% and expenses of 54.10% and an overall cap rate of 5%, giving us our $11,131,000. We have pictures on page 6. Giving an overhead view of the property. And we've included the mailer as submitted. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Smith, any questions of the assessor?
Again, this is all model driven, as they all are.
Yes.
The monthly rent per suite for this one that has a 2/3 3-bedroom, 1/3 2-bedroom split is about $100 less than the prior property.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Those are all of my questions.
Thank you. Richard, any questions of the assessor?
No, I'm fine.
Ed?
No questions, thanks.
Thank you. I have no questions either. And Mr. Smith, when you are ready, please.
Thanks, thank you. So, looking at 650 St. Anne's Road, close proximity to the prior property, just slightly further south. It it would be considered to be in poorer condition than the one just immediately prior by evidence of the photographs there. You can see the original, very original condition of build out 1976, so it's older than that particular property. Very original fixturing replacement where absolutely needed in some circumstances. They have had water penetration issues around windows in this property as well. You can see the wear and tear, the original nature of the kitchens as well as bathrooms. That is what the inside of these units look like. Beyond that, you're looking at exterior. You can see the drive into the subject property is in desperate need of replacement, as well as the cracking of all of the parking lots and walkways, etc. So that is the overall condition. Certainly below average. Let's see, somewhat towards the well below average condition. In terms of this property, we're looking at a total of, I have 99 units for the subject property versus the 100 that the city has. We have 32 2-bedrooms, 47 3-bedrooms, and 24 bedroom units. Again, 4-bedroom units certainly being very rare in the marketplace. 3 bedrooms getting up there in rarity as well. Certainly not the same degree of demand for properties such as that by investors in the marketplace. Pardon me. Moving on to valuation, we have the same rental comparables, and if you look at our valuation on page number 12, the size of the units. So we have 3 and 4 bedroom units here. We have, in this case, used the average market rent for St. Paul townhouses that CMHC has provided. Now we have the background of the rental comparables that we have, but in this case we have a lot of 4-bedroom units here as well. So if they were an average average condition, they would likely rent for what the average in the marketplace is. They're not average, but we're assigning that rent to them, less a deduction for the condition of those. If you were a renter and it was a normal market apartment, you went and saw this condition versus a comparable property next door that was average, you would pay less for this one. So we've made a deduction in this case of 10% to that average rental rate across the board. So that brings us to a gross rental income of $1,207,000 for the subject property. The actual revenue collected was $425,000 roughly, as shown in the documentation there. If you average that gross revenue out, it comes to $1,016 per unit in rent for the subject property. We've used the same 2.4% vacancy. Our expense stabilization chart is shown at the bottom of page number 13. Pardon me. The allowances that are shown there are, let's see how they were calculated in the column on the right-hand side. And our R&M, just for comparative purposes, comes out to $1,686 per unit if you do the calculation. So it's not out of line. They're not spending an extraordinary amount of money on these, nor a lower amount than they should be. So it's in line with the market. Capitalization rates. We have the same issues as discussed in the prior ones. Not going to go through those in detail again. They are still certainly present here, whether it's in St. Vital or Tuxedo or other locations. We do make an adjustment based on some factors. So we are at 6.5% for the subject property using this cap rate. If you flip to my page number 18, capitalizing the net operating income, which is again based on CMHC townhouse average for St. Vital, less a deduction for the condition. Again, we have 3 and 4 bedroom units, so we felt that the CMHC was probably more appropriate given the greater number of 4 bedroom units. Still coming out at $1,016 per unit. Stabilized expenses coming in at lower dollar value than the city at $624, $490. Our NOI, I think, is certainly fair. And the cap rate of 6.5%, again, you're not going to see purchases of significant townhouse properties likely under 6% in the marketplace. So we have assigned a capitalization rate of 6.5% to the subject property. In fact, I believe there were a number of decisions in the last cycle on townhome properties at 6%, and in many cases the townhomes were already valued at 6% by the city, and we're looking at 5% this cycle. So 6.5% is by no means a stretch. It is representative of what would be achieved in the market. So our final value of $8,481,000 is based on those parameters. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Ms. Martins, any questions of the assessor? Pardon me, of the appellant?
I'm just confused by the market rent, and I think it could be simply because we have a different number of suites, which we should take a look at. But also with when I'm trying to calculate it, I can't reproduce your number.
Which one is
It's
that?
probably just a me thing. It's just I think it's the 10% reduction. If you look at, you're on page 18, The 1,016, is that after removing the 10%?
It is, yes. So if you look on my page 12, the gross potential prior to reduction is 1,341,252.
Okay.
Less 10% brings it down to the 1,207,127.
And did you work out the value if there was 100 units, or, and just because I'm not sure with the disparity in the suite count, if there's 99 units or if there's 100 units?
Right, my evidence from the ownership, Manitoba Housing, is that there's 99 units. I cannot say that I counted the units, but they state that there is 99.
Okay.
And
Something we need
that
to look
breakout
into.
is as follows, so it's probably something we should look at, I guess.
Definitely, thank you.
Thank you. Ed, any questions of the
I might have missed this, but I've noticed that your expense allowance percentage, in all the other cases, you've taken the same one as the city has, 54.1,
No.
and here it is 53.11.
No, I haven't, in fact. If you go back through the prior ones, I did the stabilization for each of them, and when it was very close to the cities and we were very close in rent, I felt that the overall, NOI that came out was fair, so we did use the same as the city in the two that were in Fort Richmond, but all the other ones, you can see that we used the stabilized expenses that we developed, which is the same for this one too.
Okay. And you don't have to mention the risks again, as you said. No further questions, thanks.
Thank you. Richard, any questions?
A comment and a couple of questions. On page 8, this may come to the 99 versus 100. You have 99 itemized, 32, 47, and 20. Again, now does that jive with 100 or 99 in your statement?
I have 99.
Okay, so you're consistent. I'm looking at the map on page 8, and it looks like an extensive array of sidewalks, driveways, parking spots. Did you attend the property yourself?
I did.
And are they all in as bad a shape as the photographs that you showed us here on page 4 and 5?
Yes, that's the general condition of the property in general. I didn't just show the worst of the property, it's
That's what I wanted to clarify, that they're all
That's what
that
it looks
bad,
like,
okay.
yeah.
Next question would be in relation to some upgrade work you talk about, building improvements. Are there permits taken out for that? I'm referencing page 8. With an ongoing renovation project underway to upgrade the below average condition of the units and exterior of the structure. You see that?
They are beginning to do renovations to this unit. I'm sorry, we have 8 properties today, so I forgot to review what I had written for this particular one. They are beginning the process of doing that, and so they have the money set aside to begin that process. I don't know how long it's going to take.
To the best of your knowledge, is the work underway at this time?
I believe they have I think they have started it, but I don't know the level they're at. It's certainly nowhere near completion, and the majority of the property will be as shown in what I presented. I do ask these questions of the property managers when we visit the site and go through them.
Okay.
So my apologies for not pointing that part out.
Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you, Richard.
And again, that's reflective of the degree of deterioration that they have there, right? It's come to the top of the heap because it's fallen so far below market.
Okay, I have no questions. Ms. Martins, any requirement for summary?
No, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Smith?
My only summary would be to point out the prior history of the, field history of the property as shown on page number 3. Thank you.
Noted, thank you. Okay, that concludes 615 Sands Road. Next property on the docket is 1606 Burroughs Avenue. And we're dealing with the 2020 realty assessment. Again, this is City Winnipeg Housing Authority. Okay, when you are ready, Ms. Martins.
This is roll number 14021610100. Our assessed value is $14,591,000. This property has 19 buildings, a combination of 1- and 2-story properties, and the year built was 1963. There is a land area of 495,713 square feet with a plan area of 80,469 square feet. On page 2, again, it's the same comparables, so please disregard comparable number 3. On page number 3, we have our income workup. We have a suite count of 160. The monthly rent is $1,025.66. We have vacancy loss of 2.4%, expenses at 54.45%, and a cap rate of 6%. On page 6, we have a picture of the property, overhead views, and then we've included the income and expense mailer information. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Martins. Mr. Smith, any questions of the assessor?
Yes, if I can just have
Take your time.
a moment.
Sure.
So, just looking at the cover page, again, it appears like, it appears as though the basement area has been included in the gross floor area.
Yes.
That's my same question. I guess that would probably lead to, in the model, if the average size of the units was bigger, it would probably lead to an increased rent. Is that fair to say?
I'm not sure how they were entered into the model or what valuation was given to the basement space, so I can't say for sure.
Okay. And the, this property is part of the overall Gilbert Park Manitoba housing complex, correct? Same as the following 2 properties after this one?
Yes.
And the valuation is again, it's all model driven.
Yes, it
No
is.
changes there, and we're at 6% capitalization rate for this property.
Yes, they are.
Do we know what drove that number?
I don't know for sure. It is model. My assumption would be the size
So we have,
and perhaps the neighborhood.
160 units here, but the, versus say, what was it, 147 in Tuxedo, and 5 versus 6?
Yeah, maybe we'll not go there
Okay.
because she never
That's fine.
presented that evidence.
That's
so-
fine, I won't do that. Those are all of my questions, thank you.
Thank you.
One final question, I'm sorry. does the department look at decisions from past cycles with regard to valuation going forwards?
It is our goal to look at reasonable values and to be equitable.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ed, any questions of the assessor?
No questions, thank you.
Okay, Richard?
One, you've indicated actually you're built 63. Now I look at the photograph, and that's a very large complex, and I know the complex. A lot of buildings. Was it all built in 63, or was it phased in, do you know, over a number of years?
When this one was put on the roll, the decision was to put the actual year built as 1963. So I'm not sure if that's the year that it was first constructed, or if that's the final year of construction, or if that's an average of the time. Because you're right, this obviously didn't go up
Yeah.
in, a month.
July, August of
Yeah.
1963.
So
Okay.
that was a decision that was perhaps made in 1963.
Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you. And I have no questions. Mr. Smith, when you are ready, please.
Okay, great, thank you. So I'll just point out at the beginning here, if I can get you to flip to the very back page of my brief. There was decision from 2016 on this property as shown on the board revision order. Pardon me, where the capitalization rate utilized was 6.5% by the board of revision for the subject property. As shown on the order there. We're really not looking at, based on the evidence that we've seen from commercial brokerages and our own study, we're not seeing any shift in the marketplace with regard to cap rate, certainly not going down in any case. My apologies, I totally forgot to point this out in the prior property, and I know that this is after the fact, but if you flip to the back page of that one on 615 St. Anne's, you can see that the decision taken on that property in 26 for the 2018 appeal was based on a 7% capitalization rate for that property at that time frame. So keeping that aside, moving forward with 1606 Burroughs, again, we're looking at Gilbert Park here. I will point out that this property and the following two properties are part of the whole complex. It is indeed Manitoba Housing, I guess in collaboration with the City Winnipeg Housing Authority. I will get you to flip to the addenda of my material. Easiest way to find what I'm looking at, if you flip until you find a green page, which is the C. Richard Ellis cap rates, which are in all of these briefs. Following that, you have two articles, one from CBC, and then the following one, I believe from the Winnipeg Free Press regarding different incidents at the Gilbert Park facility. So Gilbert Park is a very large social housing complex. It has has a great degree of associated social issues, those being illegal drugs, violence, family disputes. In this case, as shown in the articles at the back of the brief, you can see that there was a standoff with a resident charged with attempted murder, 12-hour standoff with police with the SWAT team called in, violent robbery. We have, prior to that, going back a little bit, we have a death that actually occurred in a murder case at the property, and there is obviously description of that. I leave that to you to read. The reason I present them is Gilbert Park is certainly very well known to have these issues. This is well below average location, and the issues associated with Gilbert Park are ongoing. They have invested money in trying to institute social programs, et cetera, to assist. The problem remains. They have significant ongoing issue beyond the normal issues of risk that I have presented here. You're looking at a property with significant stigma on the marketplace within Winnipeg. Any investor looking at this, either from inside Winnipeg or coming in from outside, would either know or quickly find out about the issues surrounding Gilbert Park, and take this into consideration if they were to be acquiring a property such as this. There is no real market for acquiring social housing conditions like this, but we do need to value it, so that does need to be taken into consideration in assigning the cap rate. So let's move into the description itself. Property built in 1963. If you look at my photographs for the build out, we have 2, 3, and 4 bedrooms, 58 2 beds, 85 3 beds, 17 4 beds. So certainly a lot of 3 beds plus 4 beds, 160 total units. The conditions are shown in the following pages. Certainly in very tough condition. A greater degree of wear and tear overall in this facility. You can see the relatively original conditions of the flooring in many cases. Many of some of the cabinetry has been replaced over time and then thoroughly damaged afterwards. But there's a mix of older and newer, but the overall condition of the interior of the units is well below average. Moving beyond that, if you look at the location of the property, page number 9, you can see that it is located just off of Burroughs there, in the Burroughs Keewatin area, so to the east of Keewatin, just north of Selkirk Avenue and the train tracks, Shaughnessy Heights, next to Inkster Park essentially. So that is our location. So how do we value this? Moving into the valuation, we present both the rental comparables that we had, as well as the CMHC averages for the area. Our valuation, we have used the averages from our rental market study, those being $885 for the 2 beds, $1,001 for the 3 beds, and as the average for 4 beds appeared to decrease in our model, we simply used the same $1,001 for the 4-bedroom units in the complex. To this, we've deducted 5% for condition for the subject property. Some of the interior has had some renovation. Not that it stays in pristine condition in this project, but there has been a slight degree of renovation for some of the units. So we make a deduction of 5%, which gives us a rental gross potential rental of $1,749,000. Again, the revenue they bring in is well below that. We use the same 2.4% vacancy as the city. In fairness, looking at the expense allowance at the bottom of page 12, again, we present the 3-year history of the property, and then we go through the stabilization for the property. So we have R&M just under 300,000, 160 units, so that's certainly a fair number to arrive at there, if you do the math on that. We've added property management and a professional fee. And we come to a net operating, we come to an expense allowance of $820,482 for the property, significantly under what the city had projected there, and we come to an NOI slightly higher than the city, so it's similar in nature there, although we arrive through different paths. Capitalization rate, again, there is a significant stigma attached to Gilbert Park in the marketplace. Safety is obviously a concern in this location. There's, if you go on site, there's a number of needle exchange locations on site and in the vicinity. Just further evidence of the issues that surround this particular complex. So as an investor, you're looking at this project and all of the condition of the property, the deferred maintenance, the ongoing wear and tear that you're likely to experience there. This would certainly drive a lower value and result in a higher capitalization rate on purchase. So we've assigned a cap rate of 7% to the subject property in our valuation. And this gives you a final market value of $12,667,000. Now, if you look in the addenda, as with the rest of them, I've included the income and expense, the Colliers and C.B. Richard Ellis information, as well as the news articles, and at the very back I've included the, pardon me, I have included the decision from the 2018 Board of Revision, which has been further appealed to the municipal board. So it's reduced to 13,000 and 9,000, appealed onwards to the municipal board. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Ms. Martins, any questions of the appellant?
No, I just wanted to touch briefly on all of these issues with Gilbert Park are ongoing and they're not new. So the evidence that you brought about the decision from 2018, is there anything to indicate that the value should be additionally reduced based on any of the issues that you've brought forward today?
Yes, I think the evidence is that it was appealed onwards to the municipal board by the appellant at that time on behalf of the ownership. So their valuation, I believe, would reflect lower than the 13 million at the time, which is why it's at the municipal board.
And all of the issues that you presented today were present previously?
They would have been present previously as well, yes, thank you.
Thank you. Richard, any questions of the appellant?
Did you attend the property yourself?
Yes.
So when I look at the profile of a couple of your photos on page 4, coming back to your point about the basement area and square footage being included, it almost looks to me like that may be a 3-story structure, like a built-out or built-up basement area with those larger windows.
There's, I
Sorry,
know
let
what you're
me-
looking at.
Yeah,
Yeah, so
and
go ahead.
not in all suites, I noticed, by some of the other photos, but a number of them, it appears to be built up to a 3rd story. Am I seeing that correctly?
I do see what you're looking at on the cover page there, and that, I don't have a breakout of that, but that would be the exception, what you're looking at, and that would be like a consider it like a bi-level where they've raised the basement so you get more light in that particular one. But by and large, what you're looking at would be towards the right-hand side of the
Well,
page. in
If you
terms
look
of-
at page 4, I'm seeing a similar profile at unit number 4 in both suites. Side by each, they have that raised basement space. I know that's not consistent on the whole frontage of this photo, so I'm just wondering if you know.
I
even
don't,
if a number of them were 3-story.
I don't, but I can tell you that it would be a very small percentage of the overall thing, and that the basement space would be, again, bare walls, and if you were to be selling a home of that, it would never be included in the gross floor area of the unit.
Thank you. No other questions?
Thank you. Ed, any questions?
No questions, Eddie.
Thank you. Mr. Smith, my only question, page 18 in the summary. What rent are you using per month per unit?
It comes out to $911.
$911, okay.
In rent.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Ms. Martin, this requirement for summary?
No, thank you.
Mr. Smith?
No, just that 911 is reflective of the number of 2 beds in there as well, so it brings it down somewhat because there's more 2 beds
Okay.
in relation to the overall.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. That concludes 1606 Burroughs Avenue. Next one on the docket is 10 Gilbert Avenue. And we've got, so 10 Gilbert Avenue is a 2020 Realty Appeal owned by CMHC. Ms. Martins, when you're ready, please.
Thank you.
This is roll number 14021620500. The assessed value is $4,527,000. There are six buildings with 2 stories, and it was built in 1969. The land area is 150,962. And the plan area is 23,538. On page 2, we have same comparables again, and please remove comparable number 3. On page 3, we have our income workup. We have 41 suites. 9 of them are 2-bedroom and 32 of them are 4-bedroom. Our monthly rent per suite is $1,241.99. The vacancy loss is 2.4%, with expenses at 54.45% and a cap rate of 6%. On page 6, we have an overhead view. And then we've included the income and expense. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Smith, any questions of the assessors? 3.
Yes, just looking at so this property was built in '69, so very similar in age to the prior one, 1963.
Yes.
And we have both 2 and 4 bedroom units here as shown on your on the model from the city. The rent discrepancy strikes me between 1,025 in the last property versus 1,242 here. Is there?
Well,
I
we
don't know
don't
how to
compare
ask this question.
assessments.
Does that strike you that would be on the high side?
It does appear that there is a difference in the rent applied.
And the rest of it again is model driven, and we're looking at a 6% base for the cap rate. And the property has not been inspected by the city. Those are all of my questions, thank you.
Thank you. Richard, any questions of the assessor?
I'm looking at your photo on page 6,
Yes.
and I'm a little bit confused. My problem here, are we talking about the red circle or the orange circle property? What?
If you look at the top view.
Yeah.
That's, what is in red is the same as what's down there. The difference is that if there was a question about which building, because the bottom one has the building number, whereas the top one doesn't have any numbers on the building, but it's a picture of the same property. It's just that across the street from the property, the individual houses, on the top picture, they're circled in purple, and it's very subtle. Whereas
Oh, I see.
in
I
the
don't
bottom
know.
picture, it's very obvious, they've got bright orange, same as,
So they are not included?
they're not included.
Okay,
We're
that
just
was my
looking at the
confusion.
big property that's in red.
Okay, okay, good, because the other question was this property on the other side of the photo, which is circled in orange in the bottom photo.
Yes.
I'm gonna just discard the bottom photo and look at the top photo then.
Yes.
Okay, good. And you're saying there are 41 or 42 units in
Yes,
that
and-
property, 41 units.
And the bottom photo, it shows a little bit of the height, whereas the top photo, it doesn't show any of the height.
I
and
see
that's-
that. Okay. Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you. Ed, any questions?
No questions, thanks.
Okay, so this, Ms. Martins, this property is also rent based on income. Is it subsidized, Manitoba? This is Canada.
This is Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation.
This is federal
Um,
SOA or kind of?
I'm not sure about all of the individual details, or if they're working in
Yeah.
conjunction with Manitoba Housing, or
Yeah.
how this one comes about. It is part of this Gilbert complex.
Okay.
It's very, very close by in proximity, and it's,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, we'll leave it at that. Thank you. Okay, that's all my questions. Mr. Smith, when you are ready, please.
Okay, so 10 Gilbert Avenue again is part of the larger Gilbert Park development. Manitoba Housing is the operator certainly of this property. The property is located, if you look on my page number 8, I have the same, more or less the same image as the city does. It's located directly south of the prior property across Gilbert Avenue, so you can see that it forms part of the overall Gilbert Park complex. And our next property, Magnus, is located immediately to the west of this one, just across Buller. It runs between Gilbert and Magnus. So that is the location that we're dealing with. Again, property built in 1969, 41 total units. Our photographs are shown on the following page. Again, there has been some replacement where required, where say sink basins or vanities are destroyed. They obviously have to put in a new one of their new base quality that they put into the units. By and large, we're looking at flooring and cabinetry, etc., from a very long time ago. I won't say it's from 1969, but some of them certainly could be. Probably hasn't, from what I saw, hasn't seen a lot of change over that time frame, except obviously where required. Now, 41 total units, some of them larger, in the 3 and 4 bedroom range, etc. Looking at the valuation, again, we approach this in the same fashion as the last property, and we have based this on the market averages from our market study of rental rates. So we're looking at 3, 4, and 5 bedrooms here. And 5 bedrooms, certainly very rare in the marketplace. We have assigned the average rent of $1,001 across all of them with no deduction. Obviously, condition is an issue in this property, but then we have 4 and 5 bedrooms as well. So in seeking equity, there is no finding 5-bedroom townhouse comparables out there is virtually impossible. So to say what they should rent for, well, we've accommodated for that by not making a deduction in the rent. So using that, we come up with our gross rental income of $467,867, 2.4% vacancy allowance, and our expenses are stabilized on page number 13. You can see in this instance, we have reduced the R&M from what was being spent on it in the prior 3 years, which ranged from $198,000 down to $109,000, all of which is above the norm for the marketplace, but is representative of what needed to be spent on this property and is ongoing. As you can see in the 2018 figures, $132,000. We assigned $2,000 a unit in R&M, which I think is certainly fair for the subject property. So our stabilized expense allowance, $316,000. You flip to page number 18. Using these parameters, we come down to a net operating income of $164,377. So our rent is lower than the city. I think certainly if you look at look at the units and what they would rent for on the market, and if you compare that 1,001 to both the prior property, which was at I forget 1,025 or in that range, 1,037, pardon me, by the city. And the following property, which is at 1,025, I think we're in the range that we should be as far as rent on this property as well. So NOI, $164,000. We use the same cap rate of 7% for the same reasons, giving us a final value, market value of $2,348,000. The addendum materials remain the same as the prior property. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Ms. Martins, any questions?
Oh, sorry, just clarification, because it's not on your chart. The rent of $1,001 was used, and there was no other percentage reduction as there were on a few of the other ones?
That's correct.
Okay. I just
Largely
wanted-
because of the size increase.
Yeah.
And no comparables truly to arrive at. So we just avoided the deduction and felt that that would
Just wanted
balance
to make
it.
sure I'm putting the right thing in the chart. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ed, any questions of the appellant?
No, thanks.
Thank you. Richard, any questions?
I'm just checking to see, I don't think either one of you have provided any historical assessment information as you have in other ones, eh?
I didn't have it on this one, I'm afraid.
Thank you, no other questions.
Thank you. And I have no questions. That concludes 10 Gilbert Avenue. Okay. And the last one on the docket today is 1605 Magnus Avenue. Just bear with me for 1 second here. Okay. And that is so 1605 Magnus Avenue is a 2020 appeal, realty appeal, pardon me, and property owned by CMHC. Ms. Martins, when you are ready, please.
This is roll number 14021620300. The assessed value is $3,899,000. On this property, we have 6 buildings. They are 2 stories. They were built in 1969. The land area is 113,441. On page 2, we have the same comparables, so again, please remove number 3. On page 3, we have the income workup. Our suite count on this property is 48, with 8 being 2-bedroom suites and 40 being 4-bedroom suites. The monthly rent per suite is $1,006.15. We've applied 2.4% vacancy and 58.64% on expenses, with a capitalization rate of 6%, which gives us our $3,899,000. There is aerial photo again on page 6, followed by the income and expense information.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Smith, any questions?
All model driven.
All model driven.
I have no further questions.
Thank you. Richard, any questions of the assessor?
No questions.
Ed, any questions?
No questions.
Thank you, and I have no questions either. Mr. Smith, when you are ready, please.
Okay, 1605 Magnus. Again, part of Gilbert Park, built in 69, 48 total units. With the breakdown shown on page 3. It was appealed in 2018, reduced at the Board of Revision to $3,813,000, which has been further appealed to the municipal board, is my understanding. So, moving into the property itself, it is in below average condition. If you look at the photos, you can see some exteriors of both the parking and the sidewalks and the exterior of the buildings, and we have some interior photos as well. A lot of original condition or close to original condition. I have flooring as well as build-outs. In terms of wear and tear, not that you don't find wear and tear in standard market apartments, you do, but what I, having had significant experience with Manitoba housing over a number of cycles, what you find is a greater degree of that. You find more of the holes in the walls and broken cabinetry and things such as this. It's an unfortunate result, I guess, of just socioeconomic condition in many cases, is that you do find there is more wear and tear on the infrastructure of the property. So you can see the build out, you can see the photographs. It's still part of Gilbert Park, located immediately west of the prior property in that Shaughnessy Heights neighborhood, north of the Weston Yards, west of Inkster Park, etc. The same commentary applies with regard to Gilbert Park. We can move into the valuation for this property. Looking at the valuation for this property, the City of Winnipeg was at a rate of $1,006 per unit in rent per month. When we did our review of the material that we had, that was fair. It was essentially very close to what we would arrive at using our model. So I used the city's rental income of $579,542. We may have been marginally lower than that, but felt that was a fair indicator given the suite count and the breakout. 2.4% vacancy. Our expense allowance shown on the bottom of page number 13. Again, the expenses are higher. Expenses for R&M rather were higher. We've used $2,000 per suite. which is well under what was being spent on it. So moving to the summary of the valuation on page number 18, you can see the comparison between the city and us. We use the same rental income at $1,006 per month per suite. Our expense allowance is slightly higher than the city at $334, and our net operating income comes to $231,090, which is very close to what the city has in this instance. So that 1,006 is very representative, we feel, of what you're getting at Gilbert Park overall. So we have 3 properties, they should be in and around that same range. We deferred upwards in this case, and the others, our range is at 1,001, and where there were more 2-bedrooms, it was slightly lower, as you can see, for the reasons indicated. Cap rate remains at 7%. I can't stress enough that there's prior history as far as decisions going here at 6.5%. The material provided on income and expense is based both on market and the operation of the project itself, adjusted for market factors. 7% for this particular property is certainly reflective of what would be paid on the market. So our final market value comes to $3,301,000. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Ms. Martins, any questions of the appellant?
No.
Okay, thank you. Richard, any questions?
No, no questions.
Ed, any questions?
No questions, thank you.
All right. And I have no questions. So that concludes 1605 Magnus Avenue, and that concludes our hearing this morning. Thank you both for appearing.
Thank you very much.